Alright, so, sorry. My aunt has a pretty cool job. She is a receptionist at Sequoia National Forest up in Northern California. Now, her job wasn't so cool about a month ago because last October, the federal government had shut down. But she wasn't alone. Her and 800,000 other federal workers were furloughed over 16 days from October 1st to October 16th due to the fact that Congress could not pass a yearly budget. Now, as college students, I know you guys don't really focus too much on politics. You guys are more concerned about your classes and when your next paycheck could be for work. But this is important because what happened because of this federal shutdown was these jobs weren't necessarily lost, but over 1 million potential jobs were basically thrown out the door because of this 16-day shutdown. And the reason this is important, today I'm going to inform you about what the federal budget process is, how the continuing resolution pertained to the government shutdown, and how the debt ceiling was related to the government shutdown. All right, so first, let's talk about the federal budget process. Now, the federal budget process is basically what Congress's job is every year. Every year around February, President in our case, President Obama would write a budget request. Now, what this is basically is Congress create a budget. So he sends this to Congress, and over the next several months, Congress will take a look at this budget request because Obama would have put what he would like to have in the budget, and they will overlook it, basically have their staffers analyze it, have them read it, and after a few months, the first step in the actual process begins. Now, what Congress does first is they create a committee of the budget. Now, what the committee of the budget is, it's basically it's the first step. They create the first draft of the actual budget. Now, there's a committee of the budget in the House and a committee of the budget in the Senate. Now, what they do is they take a look at the draft, review it, and the House and the Senate will write their own versions of the draft. They're not identical, but they write their own versions of the draft. After this, both the House and the Senate get together in a conference committee. Now, what this is this happens in not just the budget, but it's when the House and the Senate agree to create an identical version of a bill. So what they do is they meet together and they iron out this budget and they create the bill. Now that there's one identical bill, this bill is then resent back to each House and Senate for a secondary review. This review is done in the Appropriations Subcommittee. Now, the Appropriations Subcommittee is underneath the Appropriations Committee, and what they do is they, again, write 2 different versions of the bill if they want any changes done, and review it. When they're finally set, when the House one is set and the Senate one is set, the House, the Appropriations Committee in the House will vote on whether they want to keep it or not, and they will keep it, and the Senate will vote on theirs. After this is finished, another conference committee is put together to where they take the bills that they have both ironed out and they squish it together and they create a secondary bill. Now, this bill is the bill that is actually going to be voted on. This is the bill that was held up in Congress, was one of the issues with Congress last October. They could not agree on whether to pass a bill or not, or do a continuing resolution. Now, if they were to pass the bill, Congress would have voted in the House and in the Senate on the identical same version of the bill, and if it passed both houses, President Obama would then be sent the bill, and it would have signed it, and this bill would have become law upon the next cycle of the budget, which starts on October 1st. Now, this pertains to the federal government shutdown because what happened in October was Congress could not agree on whether to create a brand new budget or to pass another continuing resolution. Now, what the continuing resolution actually is what it sounds like. It's a continuation of the previous resolution that Congress had passed. Now, in our case, Congress hasn't actually passed a budget in 2 years. What they've been doing is they've been debating on what the budget should be, and they just keep continuing the previous budget, what we were paying for before about 2 years ago. Now, in October, House Republicans were disagreed with how Obamacare was implemented and certain aspects of Obamacare. What they demanded is that they demanded certain changes in which people get what insurance. They basically disagreed with the details of the law, and some completely disagreed with the law in general and didn't even wish it passed. Now, what happened was, because of this, congressional gridlock happened. Now, what that means is the Senate and the House could not agree on what to do. And in this instance, they couldn't agree to pass a continuing resolution, continue it again, and they couldn't agree to create a brand new budget. And so what happens when Congress basically fails to do its job is the federal government shuts down. Now, and as you could probably heard in the news accordingly, different agencies were shut down, as in the FDA was shut down, which possibly led to a horrible salmonella outbreak across the country, which was according to the Christian Science Monitor, and like my aunt, national forests and national parks were shut down all across the country, and that's what most people heard in the news. Now, what the continuing resolution ended up doing, what ended up happening with the continuing resolution was 16 days went by without any agreement on any between the Senate and the House. And then what happened after the 16 days is finally at the deadline of the debt ceiling, the House and the Senate finally agreed to pass another secondary continuing resolution and raise the debt ceiling. And how does the debt ceiling fall into this? Now, technically, the debt ceiling did not cause the government shutdown at all. It just happened, the deadline to raise the debt ceiling happened to occur in and during the government shutdown. Now, the debt ceiling is different from the continuing resolution because the debt ceiling is how much debt we can overall accumulate compared to what our budget will be the next year. Now, the debt ceiling couldn't actually do a government shutdown because it's actually not a part of the original government that our country was founded on. It was a later implementation to basically rein in Congress and rein in spending. So it doesn't actually affect the government per se, but what it would do if the government debt ceiling were not raised is it could potentially lead to a default on our obligations to other countries, to stockholders, to bondholders, and it would have caused a major economic downturn. But what happened during the government shutdown was the final details were basically the Republicans and Democrats finally agreed to work together, and they extended this deadline. Now, what they extended the deadline to is they extended the continuing resolution to January 15th. Now, when January 15th comes around, Congress will again have to meet and either A, create a brand new budget, or B, pass another continuing resolution. And if they don't agree again, it could lead to another government shutdown. Now, the debt ceiling was extended to February 6th. Now, when February 6th rolls by, they will again either have to raise the debt ceiling or not raise the debt ceiling. And according to Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell for the Republican Party is not going to allow another government shutdown. So as of right now, in the latest updates, it looks like they will potentially agree to raise the debt ceiling and pass either a new budget or another continuing resolution. And this was from Gregory Court of USA Today. So in this speech, I explained to you what the federal budget process was, how the continuing resolution pertained to the federal budget process and the government shutdown, and how the debt ceiling pertained to the federal budget process and the government shutdown. Now, I hope that you college students take a little bit more time and look into this, because it did cause over 800,000 workers, including my aunt, to be furloughed, which they were not paid during this. That's what being furloughed means. They were not paid at all, but they would receive back pay hopefully later. And it caused over 1 million lost opportunities in jobs, which easily could pertain to you guys because you guys are just getting out in life, you guys are working hard, and hopefully that this information has helped you today. Thank you.